Hello everyone. So my last video when I talked about my life in 66 seconds, towards the end of it, there was a part where I kind of showed myself doing a lot of traveling. This led to a comment from Charlotte Alana that said, "What is your job, by the way? It looks awesome." Well, it is awesome. So for the last 9 years of my life, I've worked for the Department of State in various capacities. A lot of people think of the Department of State as kind of the diplomatic arm of the United States government, and it is, but to work for the Department of State, you don't have to be a diplomat. What I did was I worked with people and was a Foreign Service Specialist. Now, a Foreign Service Specialist is just someone who kind of facilitates all the diplomacy that's happening. For instance, you have to have somebody to run the computers at the embassy, you have to have somebody to run the radios, you have to have somebody in charge of human resources who takes care of the facility. And so they hire people with specialized skills to do that. If you're interested in those type of jobs, if you'll go to careers.state.gov, there's a whole listing of things that might match your specialized skill. Now, I myself am no longer a Foreign Service Specialist. Instead, I train people who are going to be Foreign Service Specialists. However, if you're thinking about becoming one, here are a few perks and issues that you might want to keep in mind. So perk number one is obviously the travel. You get to experience many different cultures, go to many different places, support diplomacy on the front line, and you get to interact with people who just think differently than you do. It's a great experience culturally. However, there are a few more perks than just travel that you might want to consider. The second perk is housing. That's right, all your housing is free when you sign on to the Department of State as a Foreign Service Specialist. Whether a condo or a house is fully paid for, and the embassy takes care of all the maintenance and everything that goes on with that. So no house payments. The third thing that's good about working for the Department of State while you're overseas is the scalable pay. If you're stuck in a country where it costs a lot to live there, then your pay will scale up for that. If you go to a poor country, your pay won't go any lower than your base pay. However, if you are assigned also to like a dangerous area, a place that isn't so pleasant, they also compensate you for that as well. So the pay is kind of scalable commensurate to where you're going. Another perk that you might want to consider is off time. Not only do you get annual leave and sick leave that's normal with your pay, but you also get federal holidays, and you sometimes get the holidays of the country that you'll be in. So there's lots of time to take time off and experience those cultural activities and visit the country that you're in. The last thing that's a perk is just the fact that you are an employee at the embassy or consulate in country. Embassies get get tickets to certain cultural events, different music events, sporting events, and a lot of times you can go to a front office in the embassy or different offices in the embassy and buy those tickets at a very discounted rate. So a couple of problems or issues that you might want to think about when joining the Foreign Service. The first is family life. On some families, Foreign Service life can be particularly hard. When you're overseas and you have your family with you, remember that you are taking them away from their home, and so sometimes that can cause some issues. It's very hard in some places to fly back to the States to see grandma or grandmother for Christmas. So make sure that your family is conducive to that type of an environment and that type of living arrangement. Another thing that you might want to consider, some places that you go, you might be a target. You are an embassy official overseas. Even though you're not doing the diplomacy yourself, you're only supporting that, you could be the target of malicious behavior. However, you are trained to handle those situations, but it is something to be aware of. The last problem that you just might want to consider or issue is long-term community. When you're assigned to a post overseas, it's usually a 2 to 3 year commitment, and then you're moving on. And while you're there, people are constantly moving into the embassy and moving out, or moving into the consulate, moving out. And so a long-term community sometimes is really hard to establish. Just don't think that you may be in a community that's the same for 8, 9, 10 years. It just doesn't work that way. It's a very fluid community. So if you like everything I've talked about, what can you expect if you decide to go through the hiring process? Well, the first thing is the initial application. It's fairly lengthy. You can go out online and fill it all out. It's fairly straightforward, but know that it will take you a while. So block off 2-3 hours of time to go through it all, no matter what specialist position that you apply for. Also know that the hiring process is a multiple stage process. You may have to take a test after you send in your application. You may have to go through several interviews. You may have to write essays. Every different specialist position has its own unique sort of path. For me, I had to fill out an initial application, write an essay, take a test, and then do 2 interviews in between those different stages. Finally, in order to join the United States Foreign Service, you have to be a U.S. citizen, and you have to be able to get a security clearance. That also means if you have a shady past, then good luck getting through. But even if your past is completely clean, sometimes the clearance process can take a year to a year and a half to go through. So once you apply, if you think you've got a good chance of getting the position, hold on and be patient. I have some friends who it took 2 years to go through the process. At the very least, it's taken 8 to 9 months. I also realize that not everyone watching this may be American, so if you are interested in working for the United States Foreign Service or working in an embassy and consulate for the United States, you can still do that. Embassies and consulates around the world for the United States hire local employees to fill in spots. Some of those jobs could involve arranging travel for embassy personnel. It could involve running the motor pool. It could also involve helping run wires. Also, if you get a job as a Foreign Service national working in an embassy, there are also opportunities for you to travel. Multiple times throughout the year, different embassies send Foreign Service nationals to the United States to get trained in Washington, D.C. and other parts. I've also seen embassies send Foreign Service nationals to different places all over the world to get trained for specialized things that the embassy needs them for. So if you feel like you would still like to travel and you're not an American, you still can apply for the U.S. Department of State. So I hope if you've been wondering how you might be able to get a job that allows you to travel and see the world, that you will keep this in mind. It's definitely changed my life. It's afforded me many opportunities to see the world and to go to places that historical events are happening, and not everyone will be able to say that they were there. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask, you can leave your questions below in the comments. Also, if you'd like to watch my life in 66 seconds, you can do so by checking it out right here, right there. Check it out here. And thanks for watching. Da-da.